Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are doing right now our daily pitching preview report with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. We just go over the expected pitching matchups, analyze who we think might do a little bit better or worse than expected. Right now we're going to take a look at Friday, May 1st. Joe Duffy, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
All right, Joe, you're a great person to ask about all this stuff because you have a long-term track record of success in baseball, including this year, right, Joe?
Absolutely. It's been a tremendous year with underdogs. For a while, we actually had more underdog winners than we had total losers. Now it's a little bit neck and neck, but it's been a tremendous profit for sure. And I don't even know if we've had a losing week all year. Well, it's only a couple weeks old, but we have been very consistent.
Very nice, Joe Duffy. All right, Friday, May 1st. First guy I want to ask you about, Anthony DeSclafani from Freehold, New Jersey. This guy is freaking awesome. He got hit a little bit in his last start before those 5 runs were unearned, but the guy just gets it done, right? His life philosophy is GTLK, gym, tan, laundry, strikeouts. Now he's going to be going up against Atlanta. Trevor Cahill on the other side, who is not getting it done. He hasn't shown anything yet. Maybe later in the year he'll get it together. Maybe this start will get it together. But so far, he is not getting it done. Going up against Anthony DeSclafani. Cincinnati might have a big edge here, right, Joe?
DeSclafani did have some problems with his location. There's no question he's got a great arm, but when you're talking about a young pitcher who has a little bit of a setback, sometimes you can get some good young stud pitcher like that who has a little bit of a setback. Sometimes you can get some pretty good value going against him. And I do know that, yeah, obviously he gave up some unearned runs, but I believe a sign of a good pitcher is somebody who can get 4 outs in an inning when he needs it. So I'm not saying that Atlanta has the pitching edge here, as you said, but as far, maybe if anything, I would say my early lean would be towards the over.
Really? Because, just playing the percentages here, if he was going up against one of Atlanta's better pitchers, then sure, maybe you wouldn't be so excited about it. But, sure, he might have a speed bump here and not be able to recover from the last start, or he might just bounce right back to his previous form, and then he's going up against Cahill. You expect, in order for Atlanta to have the edge here, we'd have to have an unexpected drastic improvement from Cahill, and then also a continuation of shakiness from DeSclafani. I just don't think that's very likely, right, Joe?
Well, Cahill, you're correct. He's got an 8.25 ERA over his last 3 starts. But when you have a young pitcher who was having some problems, some problems throwing balls and strikes in his last game, what he tends to do is maybe throw more fastballs, and you might put a couple fat ones over the plate. So I'm not saying that necessarily Atlanta is the way to go, but I think that Cincinnati should certainly get some runs against Cahill. And Atlanta this might be a pretty good spot. Like I said, when you're facing a young stud off of a so-so outing, that's usually where you can maybe get some fat ones over the plate.
All right. Yeah, Anthony DeSclafani, young stud, 100% Italian. All right. Next one, we have Scherzer and Harvey. In Washington, Mets marquee matchup. Harvey is having some minor ankle injuries that have been reported, but his last game, stellar as always. Is the ankle going to bother him? I'm not exactly sure. That's something you have to sort of guess at. Scherzer, his last start was pushed back. He injured his thumb a little bit, but that should probably be okay. All reports are that it's fine. He's going to be a little bit extra rested, so maybe he'll be quite strong here. I think I might give a slight edge to Washington. It's an interesting matchup. Who do you think is more likely to be lights out here, Scherzer or Harvey?
Well, Harvey, he was just 1 out away from a complete game, so I don't, know if I would worry too much about any ankle injury. So Scherzer, he's certainly a very solid pitcher, but I think that Harvey is a stud pitcher having a very good year, and I would tend to give the advantage to Harvey at this point, although Scherzer, 21 innings pitched over his last 3 starts. He has an ERA of 1.71. So, again, you're going to have a very low total. So, of course, people are going to automatically, though, think an under, but you got to realize it's going to be a low total. So don't have that knee-jerk reaction to just automatically bet the under is probably my best advice in this game.
And then, I want to ask about Chris Heston, another youngster who's had some very impressive results so far. He's coming off a start where he got hit, but that's very excusable. It was at Coors. Now he's back in San Francisco facing a relatively weak lineup in the Angels, and I'm thinking that he bounces back, has a good start. C.J. Wilson on the other side, is pretty good. He did have some fluid drain from his elbow recently, but I'm expecting a bounce back here from Heston and leaning towards San Francisco. What do you think?
One of the problems, though, is Coors Field, where they say 90% of the game's half mental. Sometimes you can get thrown off your game a little bit at Coors Field, and I've seen where pitchers have gotten roughed up in their last start because they lost some confidence at Coors Field. Yeah, C.J. Wilson, again, he's a cagey veteran, to say the least, but he's been so-so. He's doesn't have any wins in his last 3 starts. He's got a 4.50 ERA. He struck out 16, so he's pitching pretty well. But probably, if anything, you're right. All in all, Heston should be able to have a good bounce-back game in his home ballpark.
And then I'm thinking that the White Sox-Minnesota game might be interesting. Kyle Gibson starting for Minnesota, and I'm thinking he might get hit. He has bad numbers overall. His periffs aren't good. And Quintana on the other side for the White Sox, he runs kind of hot and cold. Sometimes he gets hit, roughed up. Sometimes he has excellent starts, 7 or 8 innings, 1 or 2 earned runs. I'm thinking that it's more likely that Quintana has a decent start here against a relatively weak Minnesota lineup, and that Gibson gets hit. I'm thinking maybe the White Sox on the run line might have some value in this one. What do you think, Joe?
Gibson, he pitched all right against Seattle. He wasn't tremendous, but at least settled down a little bit. Gave up 2 runs, 5 hits over 7 innings. So he's coming off of a decent outing, and now he returns home where he can build on it. And as you said, Quintana's not necessarily a tremendous pitcher. He's not really a bad pitcher. Tough to see much of an advantage there, but you're right when you're talking about a decent pitcher coming off of just a decent outing. I don't know if I'd want to put too much faith in Kyle Gibson.
And then before we wrap it up, CC Sabathia starting at Boston. He has good strikeout and walk numbers, but he's getting hit. Now this is a tough assignment, a lefty at Fenway Park facing the Fenway lineup. CC Sabathia probably is in for a rough night here, right, Joe?
Yeah, I agree with you. I know he's one of your favorite pitchers, but he's got a 5.96 ERA and a 6-start losing streak going back to last year. He's just been throwing some fat ones to home plate. There's probably a bad joke there. And when you're struggling, and not that I expect, CC Sabathia, unless they can somehow get a time machine, I don't think he's really going to come out of his slump. I think he is what he is, as the old cliche says. And when you're not pitching well and you're pitching at Fenway, that's going to get ugly.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite pitchers. You're right, Joe. To fade. That's why I like him so much, because there's value fading him. I'm smelling a Boston team total over here, maybe. All right, so to sum up, let's see. We got Scherzer and Harvey. Interesting matchup. I'm thinking that the White Sox on the run line might have some value there. Expecting bounce backs from Chris Heston and Anthony DiSclafani, 100% Italian. Joe Duffy not necessarily agreeing with me on both of those. And I'm expecting CC Sabathia to get hit, possibly crushed. Good value fading him one way or another. That's all I want to mention from Friday, May 1st. What else do you have for us, Joe Duffy, that you think is worth noting?
Although that John Lester's off of a pretty solid outing, he does have a 6.23 ERA, 25 Ks in 21 and 2/3 innings pitched, which is moderately surprised because I know a lot of the experts I trust were saying that all his problems with the pickoff were really affecting his pitching, but he's got a high strikeout ratio. Still, all in all, I think the teams are going to play with Lester, and until Lester really shows he can go maybe 3 straight games where he's pitching well, I still think it's probably a decent opportunity to continue to fade him. Carlos Carrasco for Cleveland, 23 Ks and 15 and 2/3 innings pitched. That's the second best ratio in Major League Baseball. Now, I have to admit, I'm one of these people that think strikeouts are a little bit overrated because, look, sometimes when you have a runner on base, it's nice to have a pitcher who can get some ground balls. And look, A.J. Burnett, he's back in Pittsburgh. He's found some life. I think earlier this year you expressed your doubts about him, but he is a guy with a heck of a resume. And when he was with Pittsburgh 2 years ago, he pitched extremely well. He just seems to do very well in a Pirates uniform. And why not ride him while he's pitching well?
Because he's going up against Lance Lynn. I don't necessarily think that Pittsburgh's going to have an advantage there. They have a good lineup, but St. Louis, I don't look at that pitching matchup and instantly think Pittsburgh at all.
It's a little bit, though, about value. Right. And I do think that I think the general perception is that A.J. Burnett, he struggled, he was so-so in Philadelphia, and a lot of people think he's well past his prime, but there's just something about that Pittsburgh uniform, 90% of the game is half mental. He might be a good value bet.
All right, thanks so much. Joe Duffy, OffshoreInsiders.com.